What's going on, everybody? Eric has today's mailbag, but before he jumps into things, I wanted to give a little channel update, as I like to do that on mailbags. Now, in September, I plan on doing daily uploads once again. Over the first 11 days, I'll do a top 100 players series, then I'll drop a mailbag right after that, and then we'll jump into player previews, which will run through the end of September. I'm going to cover every Blazer on the roster with those player previews, and then at the end of September, I'll have another channel update talking about some more preseason content, and then some of the things we'll be doing during the course of the regular season. So we're going to ramp things back up. I just wanted to let you guys know that. And with that being said, let me toss it over to Eric.
What is going on, everyone? I'm Eric Brandt. Welcome to Blazers Uprise. I'm really excited to be bringing you this week's Monday mailbag. We had 19 great questions this week, so without further ado, let's get right into them. The first question comes from Stuttering Ducky, who asks, who do you see being in the mix with the Blazers, and who do you think will make the playoffs out of those teams? I feel like there's very clearly a top 10 in the West, and that would be the Portland Trailblazers among those 10. You also have Denver, Minnesota, Golden State, both Los Angeles teams, Phoenix, Dallas, Memphis, and New Orleans. I think Utah, depending what they do the rest of the offseason, will probably find themselves on the outside looking in. And Sacramento made some improvements, got a nice young piece in Keegan Murray, but I think they're just not quite good enough to make that jump from last year to this year above any of the 10 teams that I mentioned. So I think the Blazers are right there in the mix with those 10 teams now. Golden State will probably be back near the top, assuming healthy. So yeah, it's really hard to predict the rest of the order, though. I could see a number of things happening. I could see the Blazers finishing anywhere from about 4th to 10th. So yeah, it's going to be tricky. I think ultimately they will make the playoffs. I'm not sure which of those 10 teams will be on the outside looking in, but I feel pretty comfortable that the 8 playoff teams will be among those 10 teams. Our next question comes from our man Zach. He asked, if you had to bet $100 on one team to make the playoffs that didn't last year, who would you pick, and why is it the Blazers? I think the Blazers are a fairly safe bet to make the playoffs. I would definitely bet $100 if that was a choice to bet them to make the playoffs or not. I would definitely put my money on them making the playoffs. However, I think there's a pretty obvious answer if you only got to pick one team, and that's the Los Angeles Clippers. They came one game, us Blazer fans know all too well. Paul George gets COVID in the last playing game, and they lose to New Orleans and don't make the playoffs. But they didn't have Kawhi all last season. They pick up John Wall this offseason. And, I think even if Kawhi plays very little this season, they were almost good enough to make the playoffs without him last year. And Paul George was also hurt for part of the year as well. So I think I would put my money on the Los Angeles Clippers being a playoff team that wasn't last year, but will be this year. But I also think the Blazers will be as well. So double bonus if you get both of those teams, right? All right, next question is from Sam Dooley. Realistically, do we have a chance to make a run in the playoffs? My hopium is high. Talk me down. Man, if you want to drink the Homer Kool-Aid, I'm not gonna talk you down from that. It's certainly more fun to be optimistic than pessimistic. So I'm not gonna talk you down from thinking we can make a run, or the Blazers can make a run. But yeah, I mean, I think ultimately they'd have to have a lot of stuff break right for them, and that's maximizing the talent that's on the roster, getting into a better defensive situation, which we'll get into several questions about later. And then I think you'd have to have some injury luck with other teams missing stars for part of the season or the playoffs. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. You could also make a big trade at the trade deadline. It's also going to come down to, some of the young players developing and taking that next jump. but yeah, I mean, a run, playoffs, like contender championship, it's very unlikely this year. I mean, I hope for the best that it does. But until it doesn't happen, I don't see anything wrong with being high on the team and hoping for the best. All right, next we got Thomas Savansky with the opposite end of this spectrum. So picture this. We're 40 games in and the defense is still struggling. It doesn't improve by much by the end of the season. What's the problem? Do you pair Dame with someone like Josh Hart and move Ant for a forward center upgrade next offseason? Or do you keep Ant and keep trying the two offensive guard pair while still throwing darts in the dark, trying to find a forward center that will save the defense? Is it patience with Chauncey or a combination of everything? That's a pretty loaded question, man. So I feel like the Blazers did everything they could this offseason to add as many defensive-minded players in the rotation. So we have, we could see as many as 11 or 12 in the rotation at the beginning of the season, and all but a few of those are defensive-minded, or I would say better defensively than offensively. And so I think despite having, an offensive guard backcourt, I think the defense is going to improve just by having all those good defensive players. So if you have a roster loaded with defensive-minded guys and defensive talent, and you're still having issues with the defense, to me, that starts to fall back on the coach. And so it's tough because I feel like Chauncey should get a pass for last year. It's kind of like an incomplete grade, if you will. It's kind of hard to judge when the Blazers were actively trying to lose. So we didn't really get to see him implement his full set of stuff. We saw teams like the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics, who both had amazing seasons last year. They were both struggling 40 games into the season. So they were hovering around 500 and stuff. So do you give Portland that kind of leeway this year, especially since the schedule is very front load heavy? So you get into the first 20, 25 games of the season. Very, very difficult schedule. So is it concerning if the defense isn't improving and it's still terrible? Absolutely. Is it the backcourt? I mean, you could definitely make the case for it, but if you stagger Ant and Dame and have Josh Hart and Gary Payton and Jeremy Grant and players like that, Justice Winslow, around them, and pretty much a couple of those guys in the game at all times, I don't see how the defense could be like a problem other than the scheme is the problem. So it's really tough, but I think if the defense is like 29th or 30th at the end of the year, I think you have to question whether Chauncey knows what to do. It's obvious he knows what to do, but like, is he capable of teaching his team and implementing that as a team? So it's tough, but I think you have to start to question whether Chauncey can get through to the defense or not if you have this much talent on defense and it's still having problems. I'm not expecting them to be like the best defense in the league or anything, but they certainly should improve enough. And if you get everyone to buy in, which I don't see why they wouldn't, I think you got to question the scheme at that point. But yeah, we don't really have a big man that's super quick, and Nurk's rim protection, I believe that is more of an effect of our poor perimeter defense the past few years. So like, I feel like some of the best defensive centers in the NBA would have struggled to maintain their high rim protection on a level of defense where they're constantly getting pressured or having to decide between two guys. So I look for Nurk to bounce back a little bit in his guarding of the rim statistics. So I'm hoping we don't have this problem at the end of the year. You definitely have to look into splitting up the backcourt if that's the case. But ultimately, I don't see like a miracle answer of like, oh, here, let's trade Ant for this player and it automatically makes us better. I think the problems would be rooted a little deeper if that was the case. But good question. Our next question is from Chris S., who I had the pleasure of meeting and playing basketball with the other day. So what's up, Chris? He says, fans often talk about how one of the reasons Dame struggles on defense is because he carries such a large burden on offense, and that takes a lot of energy. Given Jerami Grant was the leading scoring option in Detroit, but would be more of a role player for the Blazers, should we be optimistic that he will be able to focus his energy on that side of the ball and return to his best defensive form? In my opinion, Dame's best defensive form is more of just a neutral defender to where you basically don't have to worry about him messing up on the defense, but you're not asking him to also, guard the other team's best player. At the same time, I feel like the past few years, Dame has gotten very comfortable just running back and running to the corner. Whoever's like standing in the corner on offense, he'll just go and guard the corner. And I think the days of being able to just hide him and, teams are so heavy into, especially in the playoffs, like exposing your weakest link on defense. So I think one of the main things is getting out of that habit of just running back and guarding like the worst the worst offensive player on the other team. And so I think it's going to take like a team effort, and Dame's going to have to play his role in that and step up. I don't think that will be a problem. I don't think he's incapable of doing that or anything. It's just for so long we had our backcourt that had to be hidden, and it seemed like we did everything but try to let those guys play harder on defense and take more responsibility on that end. So to your question, obviously if he has less burden on offense, you would think he would be able to carry more responsibility on defense. I hope that's the case, and that's one of the big reasons why if Ant continues his breakout and proves that he is more than capable of running the team, that takes a huge load off of Damian Lillard and can allow him to maybe expend a lot less energy on that end. So theoretically, he should have more, and he shouldn't be tired from carrying the team on offense. So yeah, I think the best case scenario is just to hope for Dame to be part of the solution and part of a unit that all works together, and we don't have any off-ball lapses from anybody, including Dame, and picking up in transition and things like that is everyone's responsibility and not just our top defender or whatever. So like, if Dame's the first one back, he's got to get ball. Like, you can't just go run to someone who's not not part of the play just because you don't want to be responsible for that possession. So I think that goes for everyone on the team, not just Dame. And I think Dame, if you asked him himself, would also agree that he needs to, that's one of the parts of his game that is going to have to be better if the Blazers have any chance of contending in the next few years. And along those lines, Zachary Brem asks, with the Blazers added defensive pieces, where do you see the Blazers' defensive rating? I feel like it should be middle of the pack. I don't think there's any excuse to not be middle of the pack. You got Josh Hart and Gary Payton, who should play a big role if we get some improvement from Nas on the defensive end, if the backcourt steps up, if Nurk continues to be a decent defender and doesn't get put on islands. And then Jeremy Grant, if we limit his on-ball defense and kind of make him a secondary rim protector / help defender, which is his biggest strength. We have the pieces there scheme-wise, if it's coached well, to be a decent defensive team. So I think they'll be somewhere middle of the pack, 15, 16th. With, if everything breaks right and some people step up, it could be, 10 to 12-ish, which would be really good in my opinion, considering the offense should be good as well. Next question is from Play by Play. What's up, Chase? He says, Eric, do you think Trendon Watford gets rotational minutes this year? And if so, do you think he gets Eubanks or Winslow's minutes? I definitely think Watford will have a chance to earn minutes this year. I think they're going to go with as many as a 12-man rotation to begin the year, which is crazy. I don't know how they're going to do it. Like, maybe Eubanks plays 10 minutes in the first half and Watford gets the chance in the second half. Or maybe they alternate games, like one game Watford's the backup, one game Eubanks is the backup. They could also do that at the 4 position with Winslow's minutes. So I think between the 3 of them, they'll all have a chance to play some rotational minutes early on. And if no one separates from each other, it might have to be a thing that's addressed by Joe Cronin sometime between now and the trade deadline. But overall, hopefully one of those 3 steps up and whoever earns more minutes will get it. But I think they will all 3 get a chance and play actual game minutes from the beginning of the season until either one shows they shouldn't be playing or one or 2 of them show that they should be getting the minutes over the other ones. Next question is from Jonathan Yu. What types of adjustments do you see are made with transition offense compared to last year? With another year of small ball, with a plethora of tough, scrappy, defense-oriented guys, do you see a significant improvement in pushing the tempo up for transition offense? What are your thoughts to add to that? Love the Blazers content. Well, thank you for watching the content, and thank you for the question. I think naturally this team's going to get a lot better pushing the ball in transition. Outside of, Nurk can kind of do it, but he's not like super quick with it. But outside of him, there's really not a lot of players in the rotation that can't just like grab the ball and dribble it up at least. So that's where the benefit of having guys like Hart, Payton, Winslow, those kind of guys. Watford can do this as well. They can grab a rebound, and you heard Chauncey last year with the young guys telling them to just grab the ball and go. And I think that's what he's going to want to do this year. And if you do it smartly, that'll lead to an occasional open shot due to the chaos of pushing the ball up for your best shooters, Dame and Ant. So if you got a guy like Winslow, for example, who grabs the ball, dribbles the ball up the court, draws the defense in, and then kicks back to an open Ant or Dame, like filling the lanes or spotting up for 3, that's gonna be really nice for our offense. Now in the playoffs, it's a lot harder to run. It just the pace slows down a lot. But if you can do it and get away with it, that's a huge advantage to have players that can dribble the ball up the court and set up the offense without having to always pass the ball to Dame or always pass the ball to CJ in previous years or whoever it was. So yeah, I really like that when you have a roster that's capable of having multiple guys bring the ball up and set up offense, and you don't have to rely on just your point guard to do that. So I think naturally that'll have an effect on the transition offense. And then the more Chauncey wants that to happen, it should also take into effect. So yeah, I agree with you, especially as you mentioned, having a smallish roster other than Nurk. We definitely should be running and trying to use the quickness of smaller and more athletic players, but yeah, it's certainly something that I'm looking forward to seeing, and I think it'll be better this year. Daxton H with our next question. Realistically, what percentage chance would you give that Dame wins a chip with Portland in his career? And what do you think the chance is that the Blazers win a championship in your lifetime? What would you do to celebrate if they do? Man, what? Daxton. If I'm being realistic, it's probably less than 1% that Dame wins a championship in Portland. But I've said this many times on the show. If Dame wins a championship in Portland, it'll go down as maybe one of the biggest accomplishments in maybe sports, basketball, definitely. Him, taking a Blazers team that no one, I mean, it would be right up there with Dirk at the very least, with beating the Miami Heat trio there. But, Dallas is a bigger market than Portland and Dame. But, similar context, I guess. But, yeah, I certainly think he has a shot. When he's healthy, he pretty much gets the Blazers to the playoffs every year. He hasn't had the greatest rosters to do damage once he gets there. Coaching in the playoffs has been very, very questionable as well. So I think, hopefully he has a legit chance to do it at some point in his career. And I think Portland will continue to try and do that. But I can't realistically say that it's going to happen because it's really hard to do. Even if you're the best team in the league, look at Phoenix last year. They lose in the second round to who'd they lose to? To Dallas. And yeah, so it's so tough. For a long time, it was only like 8 teams that won a championship in like a 30-plus year period. So yeah, I don't know, man. What I think the chances are the Blazers win a championship in my lifetime, probably also. I'm not expecting it. I'm 43. I'm hoping, at least get 30 more years of chances or whatever. But, yeah, I would definitely cry. I would be, outside of like family stuff, one of the greatest moments of my life. I'm not afraid to say that. I know that might sound pathetic to some people, but man, I'm such a diehard Blazer fan, and I would do anything to be able to enjoy that. I was born 2 years after the championship, so I didn't get to see that. But yeah, some of the runs we made in the 90s, early 90s, and then in the 99-2000 season that ended in heartbreak. And then you have stuff like the Roy Oden Aldridge drafts that bring you hope, and then Dame brings you hope. And hopefully that hope turns into something one day, and it will all be worth it. Every heartbreak you've ever been through as a fan, I feel like would go out the window if you just get to enjoy that one just one time in my life, please. But yeah, I don't know how likely it is. It's really hard to win a championship, like I said. But yeah, hopefully we all get to experience that together, and it would be really cool if it was while we were doing the show still and all that, so we could all celebrate together. I definitely probably storm, I don't know, go streaking. I don't know what I do, but yeah, it would be crazy. Yeah, something that would be like a lifelong memory. So yeah, I can't imagine when the Milwaukee Bucks won the championship 2 years ago. I just felt so good. It was like I got emotional watching Giannis, finally get over that hump and win a ring, and just how much that meant to him. I can't imagine seeing Damian Lillard in that position. That would be such an amazing thing, both for him and all us fans. So yeah, hopefully it happens one day. Okay, next up we got Edgar Miguel, who says, would you give up young players, Ant, Sharp, Nas, Keon, etc., for more win-now players like OG, Ben Simmons, possible available stars? Well, Portland has a tough situation right now because a player like Ben Simmons is almost impossible for them to trade for right now. OG's contract is a lot more reasonable, so he could become available if he did, or if Toronto ever came down on their insane asking price for him. That would definitely be someone you have to consider getting. But to like the last couple questions about championships and being a contender and things like that, I feel like Portland's best bet will always be hitting on a young player and having that guy ascend to a level that you can't get if you trade for like an established player. So I'm not saying Ant or Sharp or Nas will ever be better than OG or Simmons. Certainly that would be great if they were. But I think the percentage chance that they are better, or like Ant becomes an all-star, or Nas becomes a borderline all-star, or Sharp becomes the best player of the draft, I think you have to take risk like that and hope that one of those players pop. And I think that is just such, even though it's super unlikely still, it's still a much better chance of happening than trading for an established player and thinking that's going to lead to a title. Like let's just say we traded all those guys and got OG and Ben Simmons. Yes, we'd be really good. Are we going to win a championship? We still might not win. Whereas if all those guys pop and you get lucky on, Jimmy Butler's taken with the 30th pick, something like that, Kawhi and Giannis were both the 15th pick. You have to have stuff like that. You have to have just some sort of moves that aren't necessarily drafting LeBron number one. That certainly helps, but you have to make moves that lead to being better than they were. And I think the Jeremy Grant trade, as much as I was kind of iffy on trading for Jeremy Grant, like that was a move where we didn't really give up a lot to get him. So those kind of moves are fine if you get those kind of win now players, but I wouldn't really pursue a lot of those type of players if it meant having to give up a bunch of young guys. So yeah, I'm probably keeping the young guys. I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with that, but I think you just got to roll the dice with them and hope that at least one or two of them turn into really good players. Because yeah, I mean, nothing's guaranteed even if you trade them, but I don't know. It's just, to me, I think it's always like a high risk, high reward thing. And I would prefer that. I think that's the only way to get over the hump than, just trading them for guys that what they're going to provide, and it might not still be good enough to win. Blazers 4L with the next question. Do you think we will be able to get our hands on Jared Vanderbilt or another quality player before the NBA season starts? I do know that the Blazers are trying to actively get Jared Vanderbilt. The problem is Utah wants a first-round pick. The Blazers are currently stuck in a situation where they can't trade a first-round pick unless they change the protections or unprotect their pick with Chicago. To my understanding, the Blazers do not view Jared Vanderbilt as a type of player that would be worth both unprotecting or severely lessening the protections on the pick we owe Chicago, in addition to having to give Utah another first four. So you're basically playing with fire, considering how tough the West is, that you don't make the playoffs and have to give your pick to Chicago then, when currently it's set up, if you don't make the playoffs, to keep it next year in a loaded draft. So I think ultimately Vanderbilt will probably get moved to another team that gives up a little more. So I do know the Blazers would like him, though. and we do kind of need a player like him who can play the 4 and 5, who can guard the perimeter, even though he's a bigger guy. So I think he would be a good fit on our team. I just don't think the asking price is something that the Blazers are willing to meet at this time. And then also, depending on who we gave up in that trade, it might make it more difficult to get under the tax line if that's something that Jody will demand at some point. So I think ultimately the roster is pretty set for now, unless Utah, for some reason, comes down on their asking price. And I don't think with Danny Ainge involved they will. So I think the Blazers are pretty set with their roster heading into the season. And unless there's an injury to a player that we don't have a lot of depth at that position, which is certainly possible given our roster makeup right now, I don't think they're going to make too many moves until after a lot of guys are eligible to be traded that got signed in this offseason, which in a lot of cases is December 15th. And then for other cases, it's middle of January. So I think if they're going to make a move this season, it would be after January 15th and before the trade deadline in February, and not before that. All right, and along those lines, Matthew Baker asked, thoughts on Kenrich Williams, Kenny Martin Jr., Isaac Okoro, Reggie Bullock, and Jared Vanderbilt. Would any of these names make sense for Portland to target? What would you be willing to give up? A lot of these guys are players that the Blazers would like to have, probably. Kenrich Williams actually isn't trade eligible until January 16th because he signed an extension this offseason. Isaac Okoro, I don't think is available. It'd probably take a lot to get him, so I think he's probably off the table. Just talked about Jared Vanderbilt. Reggie Bullock, I'd have a tough time seeing Dallas trade him, considering they did give up some depth this summer to go after Christian Wood. So, yeah, I think in terms of the roster makeup right now, when you have guys like Peyton, Hart, Nas, I don't think a lot of the players you listed make a lot of sense, considering our holes up front, like backup center, backup power forward, being a lot less established than those three wings. So I think we got some of those guys. Now, Reggie Bullock is a really good screen navigator, so for a team that gets put through a lot of pick and rolls, he's someone who can stay with his guy even if he's getting screened. So he might be a good pickup, but like I said, I don't think Dallas is going to get rid of him. So yeah, I think most of those guys are probably ones that if Portland could get for cheap at some point this season, they would definitely pull the trigger, but they aren't going to give up much to do that. And I don't think even someone like Keon would be someone they'd be willing to give up for any of those guys. Prince Donnie is up next. Can you guys take the prior year bench players and compare them to this year to show how Dame has gone to the playoffs with practically no solid bench? That's actually a really good idea for a video to where we could break that down a little more. So I'll run that by Tori, and maybe we'll have something about that in September. But just in general, you look at 2 years ago, since we didn't make the playoffs last year, we had an 8-man rotation pretty much in the playoffs with Ant, Cantor, and Melo coming off the bench. And those guys are okay offensively, but yeah, defensively, that was probably one of the worst benches maybe in the history of the league at that point. So yeah, it's been really weak. I mean, going back to some of the series early in Dame's career, we had Mo Williams, I think, coming off the bench the year Dame hit the shot to beat Houston, but we really didn't have much of a bench outside of him. I think Will Barton played decently in the Spurs series, and then didn't play hardly at all the next year. And then we ultimately traded for Aaron Aflalo to try to shore up the bench, and then West goes down, forcing Aflalo, and then he got hurt into the starting lineup. But yeah, so the bench has always been a weak spot. Outside, I think the one year we made a deep run was the year you could say we had the best bench out. I think the year before that, when we lost to New Orleans, the bench was pretty good that year too. You had Ed Davis and a rookie Zach Collins, but outside of that, there wasn't a lot. So yeah, that 2019 playoff run where you basically had Zach Collins and Rodney Hood outperforming Mo Harkless and Alfredo Aminu in those playoffs and earning starting spots going into that next season. I think that was probably our best bench in the Dame era so far. And theoretically, Cantor should have been coming off the bench as well, but unfortunately that was the year Nurk went down with the broken leg, and so we at the time had center depth too for one of the first times we've had a good 1-2 punch at center, and then all of a sudden, Nurk goes down and we have to rely on Cantor to be the starting center. Myers comes in and has a great half in the Golden State series, but outside of that, didn't really provide a whole lot either. So it's going to be weird having an actual defensive-minded second unit, and I think it's going to be really cool to have that option. And I still think the offense is going to be good enough to overcome some of the lack of shooting and stuff like that from the bench. Probably could use another shooter in there somewhere, or one of the guys to step up and shoot better than they have in previous seasons. But overall, yeah, I'm really excited to have whether it's Nas or Hart starting, one of those two guys coming off the bench, and Payton off the bench should provide a spark and some energy. And even if some of the young guys get a chance to play, I think that'll be nice too. Whether it's Sharp getting some minutes or Jabari Walker or Watford earning more of a role, I think all those guys can help in a rotation. So it's going to be crazy seeing how Chauncey divvies up the minutes between the bench early in the season. I don't know what he's going to do. It's the first time that we've had a problem with a team being this deep for 12 guys. So yeah, I don't envy that at all, but I definitely think I'm more confident in the bench this year than I have in a very long time. I'm Adam with a really good question. Eric, what is a team that you're higher on more than others and lower on that people aren't? I really like some of the young teams, what they did this offseason. Detroit getting Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, and then obviously the Magic getting Banchero. But I can't really say them as being higher on them more than others because I still don't think those teams are ready to make a jump into the playoffs or anything. So a team that I'm higher on more than others, I think people are sleeping on Denver. Nikola Jokic has proven the last two seasons, obviously, as MVP seasons. He's carried a team with multiple injuries and a lot of. I think he's had a lack of talent around him the last 2 years, considering the injuries, and he's dragging them into the playoffs both years. So I think now that he's probably going to get Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. back healthy, they made some additions like getting KCP. I think will help their defense, and just kind of shore up that guard rotation a little bit. So I think they're going to be a scary team that could make that jump back up into being the second or third seed like they were a few years ago. But I think a lot of people don't see them being that. I think that a lot of people think of them more as like a play-in team, and I think that's a little crazy. It's definitely a team that the Blazers in particular are going to have to really play well to have to get above them in the standings, unless Jokic goes down or something. A team that I'm lower on, this is going to sound crazy, but it's only because I feel like the expectations are through the roof for them, and that's the Boston Celtics. I think it'd be kind of natural to have a hangover after almost winning it all last year. And their team's loaded. They picked up Brogdon this offseason. They made good moves. They're well coached. So I'm not talking like they're going to fall off and not make the playoffs or anything like that. But when you look at the East and you see, Brooklyn keeps it together and Simmons plays and Philadelphia should be right there and Milwaukee's always going to be there. And then you have Miami, who was the 1 seed last year. Can Boston duplicate that success? Will they have the same drive for that success? Will they be hungry to win it all? It's very likely they could be. I just think they kind of caught lightning in a bottle last year. And I'm not saying they got lucky or anything like that. They played extremely well. But they kind of just rode that wave of momentum all the way through the second half of the season and into the playoffs. And it's just really hard to duplicate that multiple seasons. And so, yeah, I could definitely see them being like the third or fourth seed and people thinking that they're underachieving. And so that's what I mean by being on lower than people aren't. Adam McVeigh says, hey, buddy, if Jody approached you and gave you the opportunity off the court to make one single decision to improve the Blazers, what would it be? Can I say that you have to sell the team to Phil Knight? Because I feel like that would solve a lot of problems. But yeah, if that was off the table, if Jody was like, you can't make me sell the team. Basically, it would just be what that would entail. So I would basically say you have to be willing to pay whatever it takes to win a championship. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. One is, obviously being willing to pay whatever price the roster salary is, go as deep in the tax as you need to. Now this year we're hard capped, so we can't go too far into the tax, but if we had an opportunity to add a player and it was the difference between being in the tax or not, being willing to do that, being just in general, I know it's a business, but be willing to be more of a we'll do whatever it takes franchise to win it all. And that includes everything as far down as sending your broadcasters to away games and not trying to cut corners and save money by keeping them at your own stadium to call games from a TV screen, things like that. Getting a G League team, improving the having the best staff in the league, paying whatever that costs to do that. So it's more just an approach, a mindset of going from being okay doing some things to win but not others, to going all in and just saying, you know what, we're going to get a championship, we're going to be a championship organization, and we're going to do whatever it takes to do that. So that's kind of the mindset I would instill on the organization if I had an opportunity to. Justin Ty with the weirdest question of the group. Are hot dogs sandwiches, and what's the difference between a hot dog and a taco? Hot dogs are technically bread with meat in between, so I guess you have to say they are technically a sandwich. but I think that sounds stupid to call hot dogs a sandwich. So I'm going to say no. Hot dogs are hot dogs. They are not sandwiches. So there you go. The difference between a hot dog and a taco is the way it's prepared, the way it's seasoned. Like a taco uses, a taco shell or tortilla shell or whatever, whereas a hot dog is actual bread. So yeah, they're put in something different toppings usually. You wouldn't put like relish on a taco. And you wouldn't put lettuce on a hot dog, I don't think. So yeah, I think it's just like the way they're made and seasoned and put in something. So yeah, never really thought about it before, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that. These last few questions all relate to playing basketball the other day with some people from the Blazer Uprise community. Several of our mods were there, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. If you're interested in meeting up, playing basketball with myself and Tori, or sometimes just me and some other people, just hit me up on Discord or Twitter, and put you on the list of people I contact whenever we try to get a game or a run going. But anyway, Zach, with another question, asked, besides you or Tori, who in the BU community has the best jumper? I feel like, Zach, your jumper looked nice. Carson's jumper looked nice. Jackson's jumper looks nice. Other than that, I haven't seen a lot of you shoot. I'll get to a couple other people here on the next question. But, yeah, I mean, I'd have to think about that. I'm probably blanking on someone who is obviously has a really good jumper that I've seen in the past, but just like off of recent stuff, yeah, I mean, there's not someone who stands out as having an amazing jumper, but yeah. So come show up and prove that you have the best jump shot in the Blazer Uprise community. Rip City Brady, I'm going to call you out, man. You're trying to make me talk crap about your friends, my friends, Connor and Smog, by asking if you had to rank Connor and Smog's jumper, what would you rank it 1 to 10? And I'll answer it this way. Connor and Smog, they have shown up now. I played basketball with them a couple times over the last few weeks. Great guys, have very little experience playing pickup games or basketball in general, so I'm never going to like rail on someone or talk bad about anyone who actually comes out, makes an effort to improve, and actually has fun. Like, no matter what your skill level is, we're just all just getting exercise and having a good time playing basketball with one another. So it's never about like, oh my goodness, this person can't shoot or whatever. Like, no, man, we're just out there having fun. And I would say that Connor and Smog, I watched them both get with Tori after we ran a bunch of games and actually ask them questions and had Tori help them with their jumpers. And they actually were like taking the advice and trying to get better. And so like, I'll never have any problem with anyone who's trying to better themselves and trying to improve. So yeah, it's not, their jumper isn't very high. It's pretty low right now, but it was really cool that they still come out and play and actually want to try and improve that and get better. So shout out to those guys, and hope they both come more often. And Brady, until you show up, don't be trying to make me talk crap about someone else's game, because you need to come show what you shoot like first before you start to try and get me to make fun of other people. And the last question of the show, Pineapples asks, when are you coming to play at Lakeshore with us? And by us, he means Tori and him, who play at a gym in Vancouver. And yeah, I am down to play at Lakeshore anytime, but man, you have to get me in. So I don't know how that works, if you're allowed to bring a guest or or what. If you can get me in Pineapples, I will be more than happy to show up and play with you guys. But yeah, I don't have a membership there, obviously, so I can't just show up and play. So yeah, either come somewhere where we can all play, or get me into Lakeshore somehow. How about that? All right, but that'd be fun. I'd love to come and play with you guys sometime. Just let me know if you can make that happen. That was all the questions we had this week. I really enjoyed answering all of them, so thank you to all who submitted a question, even yours, Brady. And yeah, if you want to submit a question for a future Monday mailbag, just look out for those prompts to do so in the community tab. And you can always join our live streams on Monday and Thursday, and we can answer some questions live on those as well. But thank you so much for watching. Hope everyone has a great day. As always, peace out. Go Blazers.